Welcome back to AP Banned Books with Madison. Today we are going to be talking about the book that is personally most important to me because it is what made me want to pursue literature as a profession. And that book is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I've gotten a lot of requests for this book because it's really hard to understand if you don't have the proper historical context. Because not only is this book a political satire as well as an animal fable, but an allegory for the Russian Revolution. But wait, what do all those fancy words mean? A satire uses humor or irony to expose or criticize someone or something. A fable is a short story that teaches a moral lesson, usually to children. Keep that in mind. And an allegory is an extended metaphor, usually with every element of the story being a symbol for something that actually happened in real life. As always, we're going to start with biographical information about the book and the author, followed by a brief summary, then some key themes, and then finally, literary devices and literary techniques. Before we get into all that, let's meet our author. George Orwell is actually a pen name for Eric Arthur Blair, who was born in 1903 in India. He didn't start using this pen name until 1933, after he had worked briefly as a policeman in Burma and then started working in a bookshop. He was very concerned with how politics and government affected the everyday people, even going so far as to try to get himself arrested to see what prison life was like, but it didn't actually end up working out for him. And it's important to note that while Orwell was staunchly advocating for the lives of ordinary people, he was also very anti-Semitic. This being most evident in his descriptions of Goldstein in his other book, 1984, or the entirety of his novel, Down and Out in Paris and London. But before 1984 came Animal Farm, published in 1945. Orwell despised how the USSR, which is now known as Russia, became a totalitarian government. A totalitarian government is a government that controls literally everything. Orwell was especially saddened because this totalitarian government came to be through the Russian Revolution that really used socialist ideas to try and liberate its people, especially the working class. However, leaders of the revolution contorted language and misled working class people, which is why Animal Farm is written as a fable, which is usually written for children. It's a very straightforward way of writing, so as to make the book more accessible to working class people and not be misleading. But let's get into the book. Like I previously mentioned, Animal Farm is an allegory for the Russian Revolution, so all of the characters symbolize someone actually in real life. The book starts with life on Manor Farm, and it sucks. The animals are always hungry and always overworked. But one night, Old Major has a dream and rounds everybody up in the night. Old Major is supposed to represent Karl Marx, a philosophical thinker who was highly influential to Joseph Stalin, Lenin, and Marx's ideals are summarized in Old Major's dream. He dreams of a world where animals are no longer under the foot of humans, and all the animals have to work really hard to achieve this paradise. 3 nights after this, Old Major dies. That is when 3 pigs on the farm, Snowball, Squealer, and Napoleon, meet to formulate this ideology into what they call animalism. Napoleon represents Joseph Stalin, the dictator of Russia during and after World War II. Snowball represents Leon Trotsky, who Stalin took out of power. And Squealer represents propaganda. They come up with these 7 commandments of animalism, which you can read here. The most important being all animals are equal. Eventually, the animals decide to overthrow Farmer Jones, who's the owner of Manor Farm. He represents the Russian Tsar in power, which the people overthrow during the Russian Revolution. The plan works, they rename Manor Farm Animal Farm, and the cart horse Boxer devotes himself to making Animal Farm the best it can be, saying his famous quote, "I will work harder." Boxer represents the working class. The pigs try to teach the animals how to read, but really to no avail, so they end up summarizing those 7 commandments I showed you into 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which is what Orwell was talking about when language was being misconstrued to lead people. Snowball and Napoleon start beefing over how the farm should be run. Snowball sees himself as a war hero, but Napoleon wants to consolidate power to himself. Most of the animals prefer Snowball, so when he says he wants to build a windmill, they are all for it. Napoleon opposes for some unknown reason, and then 9 dogs attack Snowball and chase him off the farm for good. He then declares only pigs, interesting choice of animal, can be the ones to make decisions. And now Napoleon wants to build the windmill. Squealer explains that Napoleon was only against it as a ruse to show Snowball as a traitor, and Squealer rewrites the whole history of the revolution, painting Snowball as a traitor. To keep this summary brief, what ends up happening is they attempt to build the windmill, Boxer working day in and day out. The windmill is destroyed by a storm, but Napoleon thinks that it was actually Snowball's sabotage, and he has various members of the animals killed. This whole time, Napoleon is acting more and more like a human, sleeping in a bed, drinking alcohol, all of which he's not supposed to do under the 7 commandments, but most of the animals can't read, and eventually they end up changing the commandments to just 1. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The story ends with Boxer being injured in a battle with a farmer over the windmill. Squealer tells the animals that Boxer dies of his injuries, but in actuality Napoleon sold him to a glue farm for more whiskey. Years go by on the animal farm, and the pigs become more like humans. They walk upright, carry whips, wear clothes, and the final scene is the animals looking into the house of the farmer. Napoleon is seated at the table having dinner with him, and all the other farmers, and they no longer can tell who's human and who is animal. The themes of this book show the corruption of socialist ideas, and the problems of a naive working class. Most of the animals can't read, so they're dependent on what is being told to them. Their trust is exploited. But it's important to note that even the animals who can somewhat read and take note when history is altered choose not to interfere because they don't think it matters. By the time they realize it matters, it's too late to safely call out Napoleon without threat of execution. This group exploitation is shown through point of view. Point of view is the character or characters that tell the story. First person point of view would be I, me. Very uncommon second person point of view would be you, your. And third person would be she, he, and whatever their name is. But Animal Farm is told from a collective third person limited point of view. Now, what all that word soup means is a collective third person point of view is sometimes referred to as the village perspective. It's a group of people. Not we, which would be first person plural, but them, third person plural. And what I mean by limited as opposed to omniscient, where an omniscient narrator would know everything, a limited narrator only knows certain things. In this case, the narrator only knows what the group knows, which further adds to the theme of having individualization taken away. You're either seen as with us or against us, as equal or not equal. But the kicker is, even if you support Napoleon, he will always be more equal than you. I highly recommend reading this book. It is less than 200 pages and an absolutely fascinating way to look at language. It shows books really do matter. They can lift up or tear down entire governments or countries. I really hope this video was a good guide to reading it, and if you have any questions, please let me know. And comment what book you want me to do next.